Tonight on First at 9 this Thursday, the 28th of September 2023. China positive. Sri Lanka's debt restructuring talks with China yields positive results, says President.
In any case, we are now talking with China, and so far the discussions have been positive. So we have to talk with the Paris Club, plus India, then we'll talk to China.
Tranche Trench. Sri Lanka needs a staff-level agreement with the IMF to unlock the second tranche following discussions. Safe, unsafe. The gazetted online safety bill comes under heavy criticism by digital and legal experts.
Would be to curb the freedom of expression, and it will cause a chilling effect on those who use social media in such a manner that it will stifle freedom of expression.
Monsoon effects. Early landslide warnings to 7 districts due to heavy monsoon.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Welcome to the AdaDerana's English News First at 9. This is Jonathan Benedict. Kicking off, Guten Abend to you as we kick off news from Germany, where President Ranil Wickremesinghe commented on the debt restructuring program during a roundtable discussion held at the Berlin Global Dialogue today. The president remarked that Sri Lanka, which is struggling to recover from a year-long economic crisis, is caught up in the middle of geopolitical rivalry, which has created difficulties in arriving at agreements between external creditors under the debt restructuring program. So far, the debt restructuring discussions between China have been positive, and Sri Lanka will continue discussions with the Paris Club, the London Club, and India separately to arrive at agreements. Addressing the Assembly, President Wickremesinghe further said that current international financial architecture must be reformed, taking current global markets into account, adding that Sri Lanka is struggling to undergo the debt restructuring process due to its existing structure. The Berlin Global Dialogue, which will conclude on the 29th of September, is a global high-level forum that gathers influential decision-makers and leaders from the realms of politics, business and society, alongside young visionaries. President Wickremesinghe, delivering the opening remarks, delved into discussions on pressing geopolitical and economic challenges.
The resulting balance of payment stress translates into a weaker economy for all of us. The difference between the advanced economies and the developing nations is that you all have all the buffers and reserves to deal with these shocks. We haven't. And it's from here that the sovereign debt crisis started. We have both climate change mitigation and debt restructuring, both of which we have to handle with minimum funds available. The developing countries require financing up to US $5.9 trillion to fulfill their nationally determined contributions. Then a further US $4 trillion annum for clean energy technology to achieve net zero emissions. Look at Sri Lanka's financing needs for our climate prosperity plan. To succeed, we need $26.5 billion by 2030. These for a country that's bankrupt, and who the IMF states will have for the next few years a growth rate of 3.5%. So what we need here is a new architecture. Developing nations will not be able to mobilize the financing required to combat climate change. There is an urgent need for a significant increase in the envelope of concessional financing made available through the Multilateral Development Bank. In the depth of Sri Lanka's economic crisis of 2022, even though the country was implementing robust IMF-supported reforms, the country could not access any new foreign concessional financing due to its situation or debt distress. I must tell you that the negotiations with the IMF is certainly not tailored for these situations. It's still the old way of negotiating. It's aggravated because the developing countries, to emerge from the prevailing economic challenges, including debt requests, a critical requirement is open access to trade, investment, capital, technology force. But unfortunately, the great power rivalries and geopolitics have been an emerging threat for such market success. The developing South, which was compelled to follow the Washington consensus, is now asked to do a 180-degree turn even without consultation with us. Furthermore, Belt and Road Initiative has been labelled as a cohesive program, and the participating countries like Sri Lanka is looked upon with suspicion. This will further hurt economic prospects in the global South, and the polarization will become more evident. For a country like Sri Lanka, we have learned to live with pressure from America, India and China. We require a constructive dialogue between the West and China. We need a constructive dialogue between US and China. We need a constructive dialogue between EU and China. Otherwise, we will not move forward.
After the speech, the president also joined a roundtable discussion.
We are seeing sort of a dangerous situation in which there is advocacy for treating domestic currency debts in ways that would undermine the future development of domestic capital markets and therefore the prospects of investment for including climate transition.
Going by Sri Lanka's experience, as far as domestic debt restructuring is concerned, we have limited it to the provident funds. Our banks are not in a position to undertake this. We've given a guarantee that we give a minimum of 9%, which is what members are receiving. We had to find a way out. This may not have been the best way out. The second item, which is far more important, is how do we negotiate? We have the Paris Club, but then our largest bilateral debtors are outside Paris Club, India and China. Then we have the London Club. Now, India has decided to go along with Paris Club, have a single platform, but China doesn't want to get onto that platform. Now, this has nothing to do with Sri Lanka. We are only caught in a geopolitical rivalry. In any case, we are now talking with China, and so far the discussions have been positive. So we have to talk with the Paris Club plus India, then we'll talk to China, and then we go back into the London Club.
Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga says that Sri Lanka has to secure a staff-level agreement with the International Monetary Fund review team to unlock the second tranche of the extended fund facility, amounting to approximately $330 million. Addressing a media briefing today, the State Minister of Finance expressed confidence of reaching the staff-level agreement following the conclusion of discussions with relevant stakeholders. The IMF team, which arrived in Sri Lanka on the 13th of September, left the island last evening following the conclusion of the first review of the $2.9 billion extended fund facility provided to Sri Lanka.
කාර්ය මණ්ඩල එකගතාවයකට පැමිණීම ඉතාම ආසන්න තැනක තියෙන්නේ. තව කරුණු කිහිපයක් අපි සාකච්ඡා කළ යුතුයි. ජනාධිපතිතුමාවට පස්සෙත් අපි ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් සාකච්ඡා කරනවා. ඒ වගේම ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදලේ කාර්ය මණ්ඩලය ඔවුන්ගේ ප්‍රධාන කාර්යාලය සමග තව දුරටත් කරුණු කිහිපයක් පිළිබඳව සාකච්ඡා කළ යුතුයි. මම හිතනවා ඒ සාකච්ඡා අවසන් වුණාට පස්සේ අපිට කාර්ය මණ්ඩල එකගතාවයකට පැමිණීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම විශේෂයෙන්ම මතු කරපු කාරණාවක් තමයි මේ රාජ්‍ය ආදායම සම්බන්ධයෙන්. රාජ්‍ය ආදායම සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපි මේ වෙනකොට ආදායම වැඩිවීමක් පෙන්눔 කරනවා. රාජ්‍ය ආදායම 2022 අවුරුද්දට සාපේක්ෂව 143ක වර්ධනයක් පෙන්눔 කරනවා. සමහර අයගේ යම් චකිතයක් තියෙනවා මේ ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදලත් එක්ක අපි ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන ගිවිසුම දැන් අවසානද? එහෙම තත්ත්වයක් නෙවෙයි තියෙන්නේ. අපිට තව ටිකක් පුළුල්ව සාකච්ඡා කරලා එකඟතා කිහිපයකට පැමිණෙන්න තියෙනවා. ඒ අතරතුර ණය ප්‍රතිභෝගතකරණය සම්බන්ධයෙන් සාකච්ඡා සහ ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ඒ අදාළ ආයතන අරගනිමින් පවතිනවා. ඒ හින්දා කිසිම කෙනෙක් ඍණාත්මක හැඟීමක් ඇති කරගත යුතුව නැහැ. Now the REMI system will be upgraded in the next few weeks. So I don't think there will be a physical interaction between the taxpayer and the tax administrator. So this has to be a very independent system. So we are now eliminating all room for errors. Correct. That is the other measure the Inland Revenue Department is taking. At the moment, they have taken measures. But in the future, the President is in the view that we should have a broader base on administration. So we will take another few steps to ensure that the tax net is broad. That is why we said in the last budget that everybody over 18 years will be registered. So that is happening right now.
The US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie Chang, is confident that Sri Lanka's strategic location, strong infrastructure and educated population can position Sri Lanka as a leader in the rising South Asian region of dominance. She made these comments while addressing the 31st Annual General Meeting of the American Chamber of Commerce. Meanwhile, State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga said that Sri Lanka has the potential to be a textbook example of a country that expeditiously recovered from a debt crisis if reform measures are continued.
The 31st Annual General Meeting of the American Chamber of Commerce was held in Colombo last evening under the patronage of the US Ambassador in Colombo, Julie Chang, and State Minister of Finance, Shehan Semasinga.
We're not out of the woods yet. So this is a task that lies ahead of us. When I came to Sri Lanka, investors were asking when Sri Lanka would go to the IMF and seek assistance to access the tools and best practices the country needs to begin to recover its economy. I want investors to ask now, where can I invest? How can I invest? Sri Lanka's strategic location, strong infrastructure, and educated population could turn this country into a leader in a rising South Asia. So this crisis is an opportunity for Sri Lanka to learn from challenges of the past and move decisively towards a more stable, more inclusive, more profitable future. And this year, the 75th anniversary of our relations, the United States is fully committed to this vision of a strong, resilient, and growing Sri Lanka, a strong economy that plays a key role in global supply chains, a resilient economy that can withstand the shocks of the global market, and a growing economy that is creating wealth and opportunity for everyone. We're backing this vision with real resources. The next year will be a very critical period. This will be the year that sets the groundwork for Sri Lanka's future. Think beyond just stability to a future where Sri Lanka's economy is a leader, not just in South Asia, but globally. Why not?
As long as the reform momentum is continued, Sri Lanka has the chance of becoming the textbook case for recovery from a sovereign debt crisis. This sets up an enticing opportunity for investors to obtain first-mover advantage in a market that is primed for a sustained high-quality growth over the medium to long term. As Sri Lanka positions itself to embark on rapid economic recovery, followed by sustainable, equitable growth, it is an ideal time for investors to position themselves to benefit from this opportunity.
In other news, Sri Lanka's legal and digital media analysts are of the view that the gazetted online safety bill may create issues with regards to the freedom of expression of the general public in the country, as it restricts the freedom to dissent. Former President of the Bar Association, President's Counsel Saleh Pires, said that the legal community was not consulted in drafting the bill. Meanwhile, media analyst Nalaka Gunawardana said that even though the online safety bill mainly focuses on social media, due to the wording, it is still unclear as to how other online activities will be regulated if the bill is passed in Parliament. Speaking to Indivari Amawatta during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, legal and digital media experts discussed the way forward for Sri Lanka with the online safety bill and commission.
What really is it, and how important or not? Is this bill a cause for alarm, or is this progress for a country like Sri Lanka?
This is termed the online safety bill, but in actual practice, when you go through the provisions of the bill, it should be really termed the social media regulation, or more than regulation, I would say social media limitation or curtailment bill, because the effect of the sum total of this bill would be to curb the freedom of expression, and it will cause a chilling effect on those who use social media in such a manner that it will stifle freedom of expression, and this in turn would restrict the freedom to dissent, the freedom of people to dissent, to disagree, to comment, and the entire regime. This bill will be regulated by a commission which is political, which is appointed by the highest political authority without any checks and balances. So this, in other words, I would say this criminalizes free speech, and that is extremely problematic.
It is more aimed at social media, but it's not limited to social media. When we read the wording of the bill, it keeps referring to online. Now, online is a basket term which certainly includes social media, but it can include the websites of, for example, your media house, the state websites, the commercial websites, e-commerce websites. The full spectrum of online content at the moment is covered by this drafting. For example, whatever that users come and comment on in a newspaper website or a broadcast house website would also be then considered as content covered by this bill. So hypothetically, if somebody were to come to AdaDerana website where comments are allowed and leaves a comment that is deemed an offense in this bill, if it becomes law, you or the company will be liable for not having content moderated and removed it very quickly. So it opens up a whole floodgate of possibilities, scary scenarios, and the lack of clarity is the biggest concern. I do, taking a step, I agree that we all need to be guarded in what we say in public spaces, including online. Freedom of expression is a constitutionally guaranteed fundamental right, but there are also in the constitution itself certain narrow restrictions. Now, those restrictions are deliberately kept narrow so as to allow the maximum possible criticism, dissent, debate, discussion in an open democratic society. What this bill proposes is to try and restrict those spaces and also to send, as Salia said, the chilling effect on people, because given that the wording is broad and the definitions are ambiguous, what can happen is people would err on the side of caution. And of course the full range of expressions, blogging to Facebook posting to TikTok, YouTube, everything in between. People will be always looking behind their shoulder to see 5% commission is going to drag me.
We already have laws relating to hate speech. The ICCPR Act is there. Perhaps it's too draconian because it restricts bail in such a way that people can be targeted. So we have laws, but here the problem is the implementation. How has the ICCPR Act been used? You catch hold of certain people. Sometimes the absolute innocent, now for instance, a person who refers to jihad, not in the sense of a war, but that word is taken out of context and he is produced in court and remanded for a long period of time. So in a similar way, what we do have is in the application of the law, there is unfairness, unreasonableness. Sri Lanka, the problem is these laws are suddenly turned down. So you find the same with the ATA bill. You find a committee sitting somewhere, no public consultation, get together, do a draft, maybe send it to the legal draftsman, send it to someone in the AG's department. They okay the bill. But there has been no public consultation.
So where is this coming from?
So that is the question now. The bill is gazetted by the Minister of Public Security. So did the Media Ministry know about this? Did the Justice Ministry know about this? We don't know, because I know for a fact that the legal profession has not been consulted on this.
I can say that the IT, ICT community, which now is $1 billion plus industry bringing foreign exchange to Sri Lanka, has not been consulted. I asked around my industry friends, they had no idea until this was gazetted.
And I think it's an absolute shame that lawmaking here is done in secret. There must be wide bills such as this, there must be wide consultation.
Several areas in the island, including Colombo, continue to experience rainfall today following the southwest monsoons currently over Sri Lanka. The Department of Meteorology stated that heavy showers exceeding 100 millimeters are likely at certain places in the western and Sabaragamo provinces tomorrow.
With the active southwest monsoon currently over Sri Lanka, several provinces in the country, including the western province, continue to experience rainfall today. The highest rainfall received in the past 24 hours was reported from the Guruluwana area in Ratnapura, amounting to 152.4 millimeters of rainfall. Several areas in Gaul, Mathura and Kalutara were flooded due to heavy rainfall. On the same note, several areas including Pitabaddara, Kotapola and Nakurassa were flooded due to the overflowing of the Nilwala river. Meanwhile, the water levels of the Gin River also increased following minor floods. In the Bandaragama area, the Uyanwatta Lake overflowed, which inundated the Atulugama Kirimantudava road. Due to prevailing rainfall, lowlands in the Anguravathara area in Horana were also inundated. In Ratnapura, several areas were flooded due to the increased water levels in the Kalu River, while many byroads in the Ratnapura Municipal Council jurisdiction were also flooded. Traffic on the Hatton-Norelia A7 road was disrupted due to a thick fog which formed in the area, attributed to heavy rainfall in the Central Highlands. With tourists arriving in Norelia due to the long weekend, the Norelia police advised drivers to switch on the headlights of their vehicles and drive at a low speed in the area to avoid any accidents. Meanwhile, steps were taken to open 2 sluice gates of the Polgola Dam to control the flood situation that may occur due to heavy rains in the upper Mahavali catchment area since last afternoon. Residents of the area were advised to be vigilant when using the river below the dam area, as this can release a water capacity of 2,060 cubic feet per second into the Lower Victoria Reservoir. In Gaul, meanwhile, a mound of earth collapsed onto a house in Ganegama North. Taking the heavy rainfall into account, the National Building Research Organisation extended early landslide warnings which were issued to 7 districts. Accordingly, early landslide warnings were issued to the Galle, Hambantota, Kalutara, Kandy, Kergol, Matara and Ratnapura districts. Meanwhile, the Met Department forecasted that heavy showers exceeding 100 mm are likely at some places in the western and Sabaragama provinces and in the Galle and Matara districts.
Southwest monsoon condition is still active over the island, therefore prevailing showery condition in the southwestern part of the island is expected to continue further. Therefore, showers or thunder showers will occur at in the western, Sabaragama, southern and northwestern provinces and in Kandy Nuwara district. Also, fairly heavy showers above 75 mm can be expected at some places in the western and Sabaragama provinces and in Galle and Matara district. Fairly strong winds about 40 to 45 km per hour can be expected at times in the western slope of the central hills, northern, north central, northwestern provinces and in Trincomalee and Hambantota district. General public is kind of requested to take adequate precautions to minimize the damage caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa claims that the government has failed to fulfill the task they have undertaken in terms of restoring economic stability. Addressing an event in Akkarepattu, Premadasa, after donating a bus to the school and proceeding to drive it, said that he will ensure an era of economic development under his governance. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa donated a school bus to the Sri Ramakrishna College in Akkarepattu under his program Sakvala.
ඇයි IMF එක මේ දෙවැනි ආධාරක ට්‍රාන්ච් එක ලබා දීම කල් දාලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා අපි උත්තර දෙන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. IMF එකම කියනවා ආණ්ඩුව අපොහොසත් වෙලා තිබෙනවා රාජ්‍ය ආදායම් ඉලක්කවලට යන්න. මහලුකොට වැඩේ බාරගත්තේ ආර්ථික ඔස්තාර්ලා කියලා ලෝකෙට ප්‍රසිද්ධ වුණා. ජනාධිපති වුණු හැටියේ පොලිමට ඇවිල්ලා අපේ රටට සල්ලි දෙනවයි කිව්වා. දැන් මොකද්ද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? ආණ්ඩුවේ ආදායම් ඉලක්ක revenue target එකටවත් යන්න බැරි ආණ්ඩුවක් තමුන්නාන්සලාට වැඩේ කරන්න බෑ. ඒ ආර්ථික වර්ධන යුගයේ බිහිකිරීමේ වගකීම රණසිංහ ප්‍රේමදාසගේ පුතා ඉෂ්ට කරනවායි කියන එක මේ අවස්ථාවේ කියන්න කැමතියි.
I've got biz news for you on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින් වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්.
Welcome back. Fitch Ratings has upgraded Sri Lanka's long-term local currency issuer default rating to CCC- from RD or restricted default. The rating agency said it typically does not assign outlooks to sovereigns with a rating of CCC or below. The long-term foreign currency IDR has been affirmed at RD and the country ceiling at B-. Meanwhile, the rating agency said that the country's short-term local currency IDR has been downgraded to RD from C. This is following the exchange of treasury bills held by the central bank. However, it was subsequently upgraded to C again in line with the sovereign rating criteria, as the rating agency said that local currency debt exchange has now been completed. The agency further said that the local currency issuer default ratings will be downgraded if further restrictions or a default on local currency debt becomes probable due to an unsustainable debt burden or inability to raise revenue. Meanwhile, a sustained decline in the general government debt to GDP ratio underpinned by strong implementation of a medium-term fiscal consolidation strategy and improved growth performance may upgrade the ratings going forward. Sri Lankan Airlines has entered into an interline partnership with Virgin Australia, enabling passengers flying Sri Lankan to Melbourne or Sydney to connect to other Australian cities. Passengers will also have the option of flying beyond Australia to New Zealand, Samoa and Fiji. Meanwhile, Fitch Ratings said that they will keep the rating watch on Sri Lanka based Continental Insurance Lanka on negative.
Sri Lankan Airlines entered into an interline partnership with Virgin Australia that would strengthen the airline's network in Australia and offer customers extensive connections across Australia and beyond. The partnership will enable passengers flying Sri Lankan Airlines to Melbourne or Sydney to connect to the Australian cities including Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra, Darwin, Hobart, Hamilton Island, Gold Coast and Perth with Virgin Australia. Passengers will also have the option of flying beyond Australia to New Zealand, Samoa and Fiji. Meanwhile, Fitch Ratings has maintained the rating watch negative on Sri Lanka-based Continental Insurance Lanka Limited's A negative LKA National Insurer Financial Strength rating. The rating agency said that the rating reflects high downside risks to the insurer's credit profile as a result of Sri Lanka's ongoing economic crisis. These included elevated investment and liquidity risks and pressure on underwriting profitability. In the meantime, LOLC Holdings plc announced that its annual general meeting was held yesterday and all resolutions set out in the notice issued prior were duly passed by shareholders of the company. Shareholders received and considered the report of the directors and statement of accounts for the year ended 31st of March 2023. Further, Dr. R. A. Fernando and Deshamane MDD Pires were re-elected as directors of the company during the AGM.
That wraps up all the news I have for you for this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time on Sri Lanka's premier news channel. For now, this is Jonathan Benedict wishing you a blessed Friday ahead, and a very good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.